from the All Indiana Podcast Network. It's Diversity Focus Today. Now, here's your host, Rickie Solid Gold Clark.
And welcome to another edition of Diversity Focus Today. I am your host, along with my co-host. My name is Rickie Solid Gold Clark, live and in living color. We have attorney Mike Murray, and we have Dr. Tammy Harris.
Yep.
I call her Dr. T because it's
we
easy.
can't figure it out. We'll get it done.
We'll get it
soon,
done.
right.
So they're with us. They are co-hosting, and we're going to be talking about everything, dealing with everything, whether it's diversity, whether it's politics, whether it's education, whether it's entertainment, you name it, we're going to be talking about it. So to open things up, I know this program, recently, I got to say that, we had one of our junior senator from Indiana. This program is coming to you from Indiana. Jim Banks, who just recently got elected to senator. Some of you by now have seen the video clip or the audio clip of him basically dismissing a citizen who went up and, hey, I've been laid off of my job. I don't know why. Can you help? And he was extremely rude, calling the guy a name and telling the guy that he deserved to get fired. Now, who does that? And this is a senator. This is money, his salary. We're paying his salary, along with his staff, paying for his office and anything and everything, both D.C. and all throughout the state of Indiana. But this is what we're dealing with, and I thought that was so inappropriate. So what do you guys think?
I was appalled, absolutely appalled. Even if he did not want to do anything to intercede for this former employee of HHS, the man is a public servant, and when you simply dismiss someone without at all inquiring into the facts of their complaint, and you call him a clown, that to me does not smack of public service.
Exactly. Tammy, what do you think?
That's definitely what I feel too. It's unnecessary. You got to know, don't, bite the hand that feeds you kind of thing. It's repulsive to be like that, to be able to not represent the people who put you in, especially if they're coming with their concerns.
I think it's very arrogant, of course, for one thing.
Yeah.
But once again, as we've said in previous shows, people have to vote. They have to be aware of what's going on and around them, and do the right thing.
Has there been any follow-up with that? Like apology, you think, I heard?
No.
Or nothing?
At this point,
He meant what
no.
he said and said what he meant, huh?
Yes.
Well, I don't know, Mr. Banks, but what stood out, among other things, stood out to me is that there was absolutely no consideration, no manners. I mean, my mother brought me up saying, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all, to have manners and decency and respect for people. So even if you disagree with someone, you can disagree with them without being disagreeable, without being insert your favorite expletive, and to simply dismiss someone as being a clown because they're holding you accountable or asking you to be accountable, that's not decent to me.
No, that's not in the least. But we will see, of course, as to what happens. Probably nothing. He just got reelected, so we here in Indiana have to deal with him for sure for the next 6 years, and see what happens. But now you see, for those that may have voted for him, now you see what you got.
Well, this is the thing. Voters can hold people to account. And if this is what the people of Indiana find acceptable in their public representatives, well, that's a statement. But if Hoosiers are mannerly and Hoosiers are polite, if Hoosiers are about public service from their government officials, then you need to tell people that. You need to let them know in no uncertain terms, we don't expect you to behave like this.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. So we have to, and you got to write. You got to let them know. You got to email them. You got to go to their office. You got to protest in front of their office or protest wherever they're at. you've got to make your voices heard.
Yeah, and you know what, Ricky? Today it's this particular gentleman who had his job taken away at HHS, but tomorrow it could be you. For
Yeah.
any other reason, it could be you, Dr. T. It could be anybody out there that's listening on anything. It's the manner in which he dealt with that person to simply dismiss and denigrate.
Right.
That's not acceptable in politics to me.
You're right. That's not acceptable. So we'll see. Now, Tammy, you mentioned something about, of course, DEI, which is, part of our program, Diversity Focus Today. And we know that a lot of the higher education institutes, universities and colleges are getting their monies pulled because they have a DEI program or have had that. Even the libraries and even the military, Mike. I mean, removing pictures of great athletes like Jackie Robinson and or folks, pictures of Dr. Martin Luther King, anything and everything, just because the president said, I signed this order, or executive order to get rid of. I mean, I think that's going a bit far.
Well, dismissing the chairman of the Joint Chiefs as a diversity hire, that is code language for I don't want a minority in this position.
Right.
Didn't look at the man's qualifications, background, etc. It's just the skin color. Obviously, you're a minority hire, you're a diversity hire, not as good. And the code language is to say, if you are a person of color or a woman and you've gotten to a certain level of success, a high level of success, and obviously you got here because you're not qualified, but these DEI programs elevated you to be in this position. It's very insulting. It's very insular thinking. It's a level of thinking that, and frankly, I don't know how otherwise to describe it, is racist. It's sexist. There are people who are of varying backgrounds, cultures, skill levels who are very talented and deserve to be in those positions, but to dismiss them as a diversity hire simply because of their gender or the color of their skin is, to me, appalling.
Well, diversity is just more than just the color. I mean, diversity it takes veterans, handicapped, seniors, women, of course.
Yeah,
Right.
women,
I mean, all those are DEI. So you're basically saying we're just going to remove everything from 3/4 of the country,
world, right.
that are dealing with, that are diverse.
Right.
So I think they forget that about veterans and handicapped and seniors and women. I mean, women make up the majority. There are more women in the world than men.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you do that? And then ladies, ladies need to speak up big time, because the mistreatment of women in this country is, I'm going to use your word, Mike, appalling.
It is appalling.
So what can we do to fix this other than vote? Can we fix it right now? Huh?
I
Can
think, well, fixing it is having conversations like this, just making it awareness, having conversations. I've been more involved with women socializing and building together when Kamala was running. I was like, I was on so many different networks and calls and collaborations, and even within my group of, affluent black women and doctors, we have our own concerns in itself. It's like, we want to hold people accountable as much as we've been twice held accountable.
Right.
As black women, we could do the excellence of most, but it's still mediocre, and we're not seeing it enough on the people that's been, getting those opportunities. So it's just interesting that our conversations is holding each other accountable on those standards, but everybody else sliding under, So it was just interesting. I've gotten to know a lot of, again, fluent black women coming together and talking about how to support Kamala and our views on holding Kamala accountable as well. Like, you saying this, but what about this? What about our community? What about our children? And that's what we're about, our children, making a better world for them, having them. It don't take a school. We can learn at home. Like with immigrants come here, they can assimilate, but in home they have their culture, they have their background.
And there's nothing wrong with their
that, right?
cultures
And you can still educate and be there for your kids in that matter. But it starts at home. It starts with conversation. It starts with consistency. Because people are going to believe only through experience. It takes an experience to change. We talked about change before, So what's going to happen to me personally to see different, to value different? And change is hard because it takes us out of our comfort zone. And I always try to tell people, don't get comfortable in chaos. And I'm thinking this get to a point where you get comfortable in chaos. Or I don't want to hear, I don't want to watch the news, this, that. Just go through the process, go through the change.
Well, like you said,
be resilient. I think resiliency is the key.
Yeah. But like you mentioned earlier, maybe on one of the previous programs, because DEI also includes veterans, handicap. I mean, and seniors. I mean, for them messing with Social Security, which is our money. From the time you start making money, from the time you get a paper route and they take out taxes, that's your money. So for you to say, well, we're gonna cut Social Security and the staff, and we don't need this and we don't need that. It's hard enough trying to get it. Even when you get to the age that you qualify for, let alone having, to worry about, am I going to get a check? And I remember that I think one of the guys, secretary of somebody up there, talking about, well, maybe Social Security, rather than being monthly, maybe they just need to get a check every 3 months. Are you kidding? Or are you an idiot? Well,
right. I'm about to say, who works like that? What renter works like that? Mortgage works like that.
Of course, the guy that said
like
that
right?
is a millionaire, zillionaire.
Far removed.
Well, and it's very different for a millionaire or a billionaire to say what's necessary, for somebody who makes $30,000 a year. That person doesn't need the same things that a millionaire needs, or maybe vice versa. The millionaire doesn't need the same things that somebody who makes $30,000 a year needs.
No, so it's really crazy. It just shows how ignorant different folks are, in leadership positions. So,
but one of the things that comes to my mind consistently with these issues is, there's an old saying that says, all that is necessary for evil to flourish is for good men and women to do nothing. And so, if we want to change the character of our public discourse, if we want to change how our government treats people, we've got to get out there and make our voices known at the ballot box, at the protests. And I'd even say just calling it out when you see it in conversations with your neighbor or conversations at the water cooler, and people make these kinds of statements. You don't have to be a horse's patoot to call it out. You can just say, your statement is a little bit biased, or your statement is not my experience. But you can't brook that stuff simply because it's not a comment or an action that's derogatory or negative to me. Doesn't mean that I'm going to let it stand.
Exactly.
I need to call that out.
Exactly. Well, and that's what we need. Tammy, you had...
No, I'll just definitely agree. And it
You
starts
agree?
with those little water cooler conversations, and just words is action.
Okay.
People can hold things in their head, it's in their heart, but it doesn't mean anything until they express it. So once it's expressed, it's heard, and it's like a ripple effect. They're going to repeat it if they have received it, or they're going to reinvent it to make it what they understood. So words are powerful. Books are powerful. Education, and that's why they target books. Trying to get rid
And
of books.
education.
And education.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, you have to stand on your own and learn, and just keep up with the technology, because they're trying to just like I think with credit cards. When I first went to what was it? A pizza place.
Okay.
And people were standing on their phones, and I'm like, okay, I guess everybody on their phone. And I go up to the counter to order a pizza, and she's like, oh, you have to text it in. I said, well,
Text it in.
you right here, the cash register right here, why do I have to text it in? Well, you got to put in your order and we'll call you. So I guess it's just a residual from COVID. I don't know. But my thing is, what if this was a woman who had 3 kids, couldn't afford a phone, had enough gas to come to you to order a pizza, and you saying, you can't tell me, you have to type it in. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I see that with technology, and you hear it, AI. I'm learning it. I'm learning it because it's going to keep you informed in how to deal with the new language that they're trying to, converse and give to you.
Well, you broke that scenario. That's happened to me. Well, you just no. I'm giving you my order right now, and you will take it. I'm not going to work the machines. I'm here. You're standing in front of me. I'm
Register,
here.
Right.
Do it. Otherwise, tell your boss to come out here. Oh, okay. Well, yes, sir. No problem. Oh,
Yeah, it's far removed, and that's the generation that's learning that this that new norm. Like my niece, she's 5. We're not talking on the phone if she can't see our face.
Okay.
I don't see you, so it's not a phone call. Before it's just a phone call, but now, no, I don't see you, TT. So it's not a phone call. We can't talk. So
I
that's
know
but
that
that's
feeling too.
coming into the the technology and the generation that's being prepared for.
Well, I
what's
think
to come.
a lot of it then needs to go back on the parents and the grandparents. I mean, in my household, especially my grandkids, first of all, for the boys, they know, don't come over to Granddad's house. They call me Poppy. Don't go over there because you better have your pants sagging because he going to get you. He going to get you and then, he's going to get you on that. And then, if you come over, well, I'm going to text you. Will you stand in front of me?
Right.
Talk to me. Well, okay, but I can text. I answer the phone calls.
In the house.
Okay? Not Texas.
Right.
Especially, I can tell. No, this was a telephone. That's what it's called. The ones you guys used to go play with down in my basement, where I've got, the push button phones and the old rotary phones that you asked me about years ago, and I had to explain how that worked, and you were puzzled like, you had to stick your finger in there and roll it.
Roll it. Roll it.
Well, how do you get how do you get the phone number? You got it. Well, how does it connect? Or the push button? Well, you're doing push button anyway on your phone. What's the difference? Well, that looks old. I mean, it is old.
It is.
But that's how we had a
now.
telephone that we talked on,
Right.
not push button.
Right.
And you stuck your finger in the rotor. It's kind of like this, just like you going to the pizza place. And when I go fast food, and they want to tell me the machine's right over there. You just put. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that.
And I think that's where, again, change is being able to adapt to what's going to be their norm, but also incorporating those values, those basics. This is hard.
So we had to straighten that out, or but a lot of it, starts with parental guidance. Learning, and parents got to be parents, and in my other career as in law enforcement, man, I'm gonna tell you, sometimes I get those runs and I'd be upset and would have to straighten them out when the kids would talk to the parents like they're a piece of trash. Wait a minute, who's the parent here?
Right.
Why? And even when I didn't go for that. I flipped the script in a heartbeat on that. But there are parents out there that, I don't know, what's the good word, lost connection or lost the ability to be a parent.
They lost perspective.
Yes.
Because parent and friend are two different things.
Or
Exactly.
empowerment. I remember when it came that big thing of, my child gonna call the police on me or DCS on me. I think that kind of, I saw a shift in that where they believed they couldn't hit. And that ain't about hitting their child or abusing. It's just that was the perception that the kids had the power. And even now, making it live, and then it'd be a snippet of the truth from that video that says what really happened. So I'm thinking it's more,
Yeah, well, that's
fear-based.
Of course, my kid told me that. I say, you call them. Go ahead, call them. They could raise you.
Yeah,
Right.
You call them, and when they get here, after they scrape you off the ground, or I done knocked you out, I'm not. Call them here. I'll show them the bruises. Well, I'll help you. Let me put some new ones on there.
Right.
So that's, I don't know. A lot of us are old school, so therefore, it's hard for us to hear this sort of thing when we know how our parents, whether they discipline you by telling you to go stand in the corner or,
Using a switch cord.
Get the switch. Get that
extension cord.
So I got to go out and get the switch so you to beat me?
Yeah.
Okay. you know.
And I think that's just being in mental health in itself is a balance between that, and even working with adults that come from particular backgrounds that was the norm. Like, don't talk back, be a child. And it does affect the psyche in different ways, a lot of different ways. But it's just the knowing. You don't hit a child when you're angry. You hit it, you don't, because you go off. It's all about emotion, and that's not teaching anything. That's just instilling fear. So just a matter of that balance and knowing, is it necessary? Because that's how I believe it goes back again to cultural and slavery. That post-traumatic slave syndrome book talked about how we incorporate habits from slavery that was meant to put us in check as African Americans that we put on to our children. One of the stories in there, particularly about education, you had to pretend to be dumb or put down because if you were perceived as so bright and smart or learned to read, you would be whipped by the master or so forth.
And now you call it uppity.
Now you call it uppity. But that was the thing. But it was a matter of protection to minimize the education or abilities of our children. But they had to talk them down. But that's what you embrace. You embrace. I'm dumb. I'm stupid. It is. So it's a lot of generational, I think, things there within the African American community that has its balances, and I was on both sides, with my kids, with raising them. They had the strong hand when needed, and they had the gentle talk when needed. It was a good balance. And them being all grown now, they can understand. They're like, yeah, you all right. I'm getting all the feedback, getting all the grown-up child feedback.
Yeah, all right. That's
nice.
Yeah, Mom did a good job. Yeah, did a good job. I can tell when they were really mad because that voice would change, or that facial expression, or that finger would point.
You knew your boundaries.
Know about that.
Right.
And I'd be in the church. My mother was in the choir, and we'd be naturally the younger kid. We'd be try to get in the back row, but still being in that choir stand. If you got too loud or she saw you doing something, boy, here comes that finger right there.
You know what's to come after, right?
That's right. So and that finger has a lot of power in that finger when you're like, oh.
Yeah, my mother had her power in her eyebrow because that one eyebrow would go up and then she would say, I do not like obstreperous children.
Obstreperous. She gave you lessons,
yes,
right?
ma'am.
Vocabulary.
I do not like obstreperous children. That meant, boy, you're getting on my last nerve.
Wasn't it Trump's niece or something, Laura, that wrote the book about him, which growing up in his childhood?
I thought that was his sister.
Sister?
Yeah, his sister.
Okay.
That, totally opposite from what he is.
Right.
Yeah, so
So it does start at home,
Yeah, it does.
Connection and nurturing and all that.
All right, I'm going to change the subject of things that's going on again right now. That's a general topic nationwide, and that is... We got 5 minutes to talk a little bit about domestic abuse, which is big. Anybody want to start off? We got less than 5. So
domestic abuse. What happened recently?
Domestic abuse, period.
Oh, okay.
Whether it's women being mistreated and beaten, and or men.
That's what I'm about to say. I've seen an uptick in men, especially young men that's been experiencing
abused by
by a woman or even a babysitter when they were younger, sexually abused. So I've seen how that's very interesting that yes, women could be seen as victims and are primarily victims, but they are men and young men who's been victimized and abused that's not talking about it, and that's behind closed doors and sessions, but it's interesting to hear their perspective and how they had to work through that, thinking it was normal, thinking that they had to occur it because that's being a man, but not, because they couldn't share the abuse with family or other friends or anything like that. But it is definitely an undercover issue. I wish I knew the numbers on that, but I know it's not as much reported for men being domestic abused.
Well, next time you'll have to get the numbers because that's...
But I do know where I used to, the Julian Center now have men there.
Oh, they do?
They have men as a part of the shelter there now. That was where I did my first internship at, but now the Julian Center has a men division. Yeah, they do have that here in Indianapolis.
Never knew that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a correlation between when you see, let me put it this way, when you see high-level government officials high-level public officials, whether they're from private sector or the government, who tolerate that, who perpetuate that kind of behavior, you start to see that those numbers tick up in corporate America, and that flows down to the home as well, because the message is communicated that it's acceptable to be an abuser. You can still rise, you can still be regarded, in
Locker boy talk, right?
right,
That
right.
type of stuff.
The bystander behavior and committing that kind of behavior is no longer a disqualifier. People accept it, and so it proliferates.
I'm getting educated, because I knew there was issues, but I didn't know, for example, that there's a shelter for men that were victims of domestic, and that young men have been going through that sort of thing as well. Because we just, as a society, we just look at the women going through that. So we'll have to investigate that even further as
a nice topics are adventure story or something.
Yeah. Okay, we got probably less than 2 minutes now, so let's do the roundup. Okay. Last, any comments? 2 minutes. Two minutes, y'all.
Good topic today. DEI, like I said, I'm glad that you pointed out it means more than just race and multicultural. It involves a lot of people and it benefits a lot of people. So we got to keep that going, and like to get more about the arts and how we deal with that as well.
The arts, yeah. Okay. Attorney Mike.
We got the pressure. You put us on a hot seat. 2 minutes, wrap it up. Come on.
Yeah, I would just say, we really need to focus on how we treat each other, how we regard each other, and have a focus not so much on just how things affect me, but how they affect our community. There's an old adage about it takes a village. And so we need to be that village. We need to go back to the days of yesteryear where you had to care about your neighbor. And that care wasn't whether they're an illegal immigrant or, anything like that, who they voted for. But let's just care about each other, and let's do things to work together despite whatever our differences may be. We're a multicultural society. Let's get it together and figure out how we can flourish together.
Okay. We want to make sure we touch base, even though the credits, you'll be listed on that. Anything else?
I'm an artist, board-certified art therapist, and licensed mental health counselor in Indiana, as well as psychologist. Teach at various universities.
And
Mike?
I'm an attorney, a business attorney. Do a lot of contracts. I also have a publishing company, Cricket Cottage Publishing. So we're looking to publish your book, Rickie.
Yes, right. My book, forthcoming. It's going to be published. Okay. I think we're at the end, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you once again for being our co-host, along with yours truly, Rickie Solid Gold Clark, live and in living color. I need to put that because folks say, come on and do that. So anyway, we will see you next time on Diversity Focus Today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.